Hello again. In this lecture, we'll be creating the scrolling background. It has a parallax effect to it, as we will have 3 layered images. The topmost image will be moving the quickest. The image in the middle will be moving slower. And the image at the very back will be moving the slowest. This is what creates the parallax effect. Before you start following along with this lecture, you'll need to download the 3 background images. Click pause on this video and go over to the download area and download the 3 image files into a folder onto your computer. Now we'll create 3 new image assets. So click on images.xc assets, then click add the plus sign, then new image set. We will name this image set moving background. Let's create another one and we'll name this one moving mid ground. We'll do one more and we'll name this one moving foreground. Now we'll need to attach the relevant image files into the 2x container of each image set. So I've just copied the 3 image files onto my desktop. I've selected moving background. Now I'll select the moving background image and attach it into the 2x container. Next, I'll select the moving foreground image set, and then I will drag the moving foreground image into the 2x container. And last of all, I'll select the moving midground image set, and then I'll drag that one into the 2x container. Now we'll need to create a file called movingbackground.swift. So we'll go File, New, File, and we'll select iOS, Source, and Swift. Then we'll click Next, and we'll give it the name Moving Background. Then we'll select Create. Now we'll move this file into our supporting files group. In the movingbackground.swift file, firstly, let's import SpriteKit. Next, we need to create a class called moving background with a subclass of skSpriteNode. We'll open and close the curly brackets. Now we need to create an SK texture called moving background. So we'll use let, as this is not going to change, and then we'll type moving ground texture. This will be an SK texture, of course. Open the brackets and we'll use image named, and the string name will be moving background. So this will call the image set that we created with the name moving background and the image file that's associated with that. Now we'll also need to include the ground texture, as we'll be using the ground texture to position the moving background texture. The ground texture will sit at the bottom of the scene, the moving backgrounds will sit directly above it. So we'll also use let, and then we'll type moving ground texture. This will also be an SK texture. Open the brackets, we'll use image name, and the string will be moving ground. Next, We'll use the init method, calling size, CG size. We'll open and close the curly brackets, and then we'll use super.init, and we'll use the very last one here, where there's a texture, a UI color, and a CG size. So for the texture, once again we'll type in nil. For the color, we'll type nil. And then for the size, we'll call CG size make with a width and a height. The width will be size.width, and the height will be size.height. And there'll be two curly brackets to close that off. We'll now set the anchor point equal to CG point make of an x and a y float of 0 and 0. Then we'll adjust the position, and we'll call CG point make as well, and then we'll also type 0.0 and 0.0. Now we'll also need to fix up this error because we're using the init method. So just click on enter to fix it. And also put a spelling mistake in there, so I'll fix that as well. The position. We will also need to create a for loop inside the init method for the moving background, so it can move from the left to the right. So let's start out by making a comment. Looping the background mountain, because that's what it is, and it's a texture. We'll just say from left to right. We'll start with a for loop, similar to what we did with. In this for loop, we will write pretty much exactly the same code as we did for the moving ground. So what I'm going to do to make it easier is just copy that, and we'll paste it in there, and then we'll just change a few of the variable names to fit this function. We'll replace this with moving background texture, and here as well, and that will do it. Now we will need to go back into our gamescene.swift file and make the moving background global, so we can call an instance of it. So we'll click on gamescene.swift, and directly under the moving ground global call, we will type var moving background colon moving background, and it's not an optional. We'll also need to call the moving background texture. So we'll type in let moving background texture equals xk texture, open the brackets, image name, and the string will be moving background. Now we'll need to call an instance of the moving ground class inside didMoveToView. So directly underneath moving ground, we'll make some space, and we'll type a comment called call an instance of the moving background class. We'll start by calling the variable moving background, which is equal to the moving background class. Open the brackets, and we'll use size. CG size will be CG size make with a width and a height. We'll now need to use the moving background texture. So we'll type in moving background texture dot size dot width, and then for the height we'll call moving background texture dot size dot height, and we'll need 2 brackets to close that off. Now we need to add moving background as a child to the moving node. So we'll type in moving dot add child, and the node name is moving background. Just like in our moving ground class, we will need to create a begin function to set the speed of the images being looped across the screen from left to right. So what I'll do is I'll just copy this code, go back into our moving background Swift file, and at the end of the class I'll paste that in. Just make a space. I'll update the comment and we'll call it moving the background at speed. We will need to update these variable names. What you can do is just double click and copy and paste the right name. There's one more here and that will do it. Now we'll need to update our function called add stuff to the scene. So let's go down and underneath moving ground.begin we'll create some space and we'll call moving background variable and then dot begin. There it is. Before we build and run to see the result, we need to go back into our moving background.swift file. Because we copied the begin function from the moving ground Swift file, we also copied the same ns time interval, which is incorrect. This needs to be changed to 0.3. Now, let's build and run. Let's tap on the screen, and as you can see, the foreground, or the ground, is moving a lot quicker than the actual background image. This is the start of the parallax effect.